Today we are joining in conversation with Nupur Basu, journalist and filmmaker. She is visiting Kerala with her latest documentary, A Velvet Revolution. You have been in the field of journalism for over 30 years now. Tell us about your latest documentary.
It's a 57-minute documentary which I have made with four other women directors from different parts of the world. And it's about the challenges that women journalists face in reporting out of conflict regions. Conflict, when we say, we don't exactly mean just war, reporting from the battleground, from the front line, but front lines of many kinds, including the psychological ones, and also front lines of reporting on investigative stories on corruption, taking on governments. And the thing that we are looking at is increasingly we find that women journalists have come under the radar of both state and non-state players for attacks. So anything that they write or they publish or they do on radio, television, which is not liked by these groups, they have begun to attack them. Attack them physically, which means they are actually causing them bodily harm, in some cases killing them, and the other is also attacking them on social media. So online trolling of women journalists is at an all-time high. So they are threatened with things like rape, kidnap of their children, called all sorts of terrible misogynistic names, none of which actually the male journalists face. Not that we want them to face it, but this is a new form of attack on women journalists the world over. Velvet Revolution exposes all that from different regions in the world.
What was your personal experiences as a journalist that made you come up with a concept for this film?
Actually, there's this organization called International Association of Women in Radio and Television, and which is a network of women journalists working in television, radio, filmmaking across the world. We're about 600 members in all. And every year they've been making a documentary film. Last year the subject was women and media. I came on board as the executive producer and project director. I pitched my vision. I thought I would go down the route of conflict, see where women journalists are working today. What is the ecosystem in which they are having to do their job? We got 18 proposals, out of which we chose 3 or 4, and then we had films. We chose the directors from Philippines, Cameroon, USA stroke Bangladesh, and also India. And I embellished it with further interviews of journalists from Syria, Afghanistan, the women who worked on the Panama Papers investigation, and also journalists from UK. Velvet Revolution is a testimony of women journalists from across the globe about the new challenges they're facing while they report in 2017, 2018.
What's been the feedback you've been receiving from the world over on your film, which is on women journalists?
It's amazing. Actually, it's been such a learning experience. Since we launched it at a festival in Delhi in IAWRT, our own that organization's Asian Film Festival in March 2017. Since that day, there has been no looking back, and we are almost into March 2018, of non-stop travel across both India, different cities in India, multi-venue screenings, and in other parts of the world. So from Oslo to Montreal, New York, Manila, in different parts of the world it has been screened, and it has garnered so much support from audiences all over the world, including India. People have really related to the film. They've said, my God, we didn't realize that women journalists were being attacked like this. And then, as you know, the new figures that have come out are really shocking. 65 journalists have been killed in 2017 in the world, out of which 10 are women. Never have figures of women journalists being killed so high. Out of those 10, one is one from our own country, Gauri Lankesh, who was gunned down by assassins' bullets on 5th of September. And the blood and gore arrived at our doorstep, 5 months after I made the film. She was a friend. I've lost a friend. The tragedy of that is a different issue, but the point of safety of women journalists, this is a warning that we are putting out saying that this has to stop. And after Gauri was killed, 15 days later, a woman who covered the Panama Papers in Malta, she was going to work and there were bombs put under her car and she died instantly. The world is, journalistic community is mourning the deaths of these two women journalists and others who are constantly being attacked.
The attacks that you have mentioned in your film are also faced by men in the field. What are the extra challenges that women in the field face?
Yes, the women, in fact, in the film, Lise Doucette of BBC, their chief international correspondent, whom I have interviewed, says that we have that extra fear of rape, kidnap and rape. And in fact, that's the thing with which they, even on online, they threaten. They say that, we will come and get you and we will rape you. This is the kind of misogyny that we have begun to see. What are all these social media handles which allow this kind of misogynistic messaging to go out? What are they doing? How can they? This should be completely under criminal law. After Gauri was killed, there was trolling on her. She was called names. And then people said, okay, now good, we've got rid of her. Now the next lot, and they named women journalists in India who this lot wanted to then get on with and assassinate. In my 38 years of journalism, I have never ever faced this kind of situation. Never ever.
We are living in a democracy. How does these attacks challenge the rights we have in our constitution?
They say that journalism is the fourth estate and it's one of the four pillars of democracy. And they say if you don't have freedom of press, then you don't have democracy. These are the clear connections. It's not rocket science. A child on the street will tell you that if the newspaper they are picking up or the TV they are watching is doctored, is allowing you to give the correct news, then there's no democracy. It's as simple as that. If you try to quell, we've had this in the past. We had it during the emergency in the Indira Gandhi era. But it was fought and it was defeated. She was defeated in the elections. Those who attack journalists, this is what we say, in the end, they will lose. Hopefully we will win. But in the bargain, we are also losing our members, our professional colleagues and friends, and that is really tragic.
How do you think all of this has affected the quality of journalism in our country?
There is a huge self-censorship that is on. In fact, Indian media is really, there's a big question mark hanging over it about the amount they are self-censoring, how they are just going along with what the government is saying, how they're not asking the questions as sharply as they should on all fronts. There is a question. There is critique in the Western media about Indian media. And that's not the point. The point is we're not worried about what Western media says about us. We should be looking within to see what we are doing. Journalism is about truth-telling, as one of the Philippines journalists in Velvet Revolution will tell you repeatedly. She says it's about truth-telling. And that is really the moral base of the springboard from which we do our job. And sometimes the truth may not be something that we like, but we still have to tell it. And that is where our credibility is, and that is where we are failing as a media. 80% of the media is just going along with whatever the government is saying, and that is absolutely wrong. The 20% that is daring to strike out are being dragged to court, and defamation cases are being filed against them. Interestingly, it's women journalists who are pushing the boundaries, even in India today and other places, who are saying that we will go after that story because we know there is a story of corruption. It's women journalists who have done some amazing stories of late in India, and they've got into trouble for that.
Do you think our mainstream media has been compromised in any way?
That's a very big question that you're putting to me, and I am not going to sit here and pass a judgment on all the mainstream media. I do write for a Media Watch website called thehoot.org where we watch the media, and every now and then we critique what we think has gone wrong or is going wrong, or the biases that are emerging in the media, whether it's television or print. And so we do that. We do that in a professional way. We do it with credibility. We critique the media. And yes, to answer your question, there is a deep crisis in the media because they are self-censoring. They should stop self-censoring. Editors will tell you that they're getting midnight calls from powers that be to say, take down this story or that. Make sure it doesn't appear the next day. The sad thing is for them that some other website picks up the story and puts it there. And once it's out in the digital world, in this day and age, it is, in a sense, difficult to censor. And the same thing is happening with films and documentaries, and it's difficult to censor. But they don't realize, that that's the foolishness of those who want to censor us.
Is Kerala an exception? Is the situation better for filmmakers and journalists here?
I've covered a lot in Kerala before elections when I was with NDTV. I would come repeatedly here and do a lot of stories. Of late, I have not, since I've left active television, I have not really come here or even made any films in this region. I'd love to come back again and do that. But I think there is an element of freedom because your politics is a little better than what we are getting to see in the north. I'll just give an example. In Gorakhpur, around 90 children died because of lack of oxygen in a government hospital. They were largely poor children. Okay, rich people's kids don't die because the bills for oxygen have not been paid. This was a government hospital. Poor children died. When the media for once came together and seeing those dead bodies came on the same page and said this is atrocious and this shouldn't have happened, what did the chief minister of that state of Uttar Pradesh come out and say? He held a press conference and he said, this is fake news. So that is how the reportage was dismissed. I am not sure that you people are facing that in Kerala yet.
What is your message to the journalists and filmmakers?
I will just borrow the same phrase from the Philippines journalist and say that do your truth telling. Tell your story with honesty, without distortion, without bringing your own bias into it. You tell your story and do it well. People will respond to it. Governments or other players who you're critiquing will not like it, but that's not your concern. In fact, in journalism, we always said that if there are 2 political parties or 3 political parties, if all 3 don't like you, then that means you're a good journalist. So yes, you have to take your risk. You have to tell your story as it is. Please carry on telling them.
Velvet Revolution has been getting a very good response in India and abroad. It picked up the Best Film Award at the Kashmir International Film Festival. It was a pleasure to have you with us, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.